Okay.
We started with Dan smiling, right?
As always.
Okay. All right. I'd like to call to order the June 16th, 2022 Communications Committee meeting for the Weston Board of Education. The first item we have on our agenda is the approval of the May 2022 meeting minutes. Sharon, are you able to get into board book? Have you solved your board book issues?
I solved it on Tuesday night. I'm good.
Okay. So I think you and I are pretty much running the show.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you if you'd like to make the motion.
I make the motion to approve the meetings minutes. Excuse me, from May.
Yeah. So how about this? I'll read the actual motion and you'll second it.
Perfect.
Move that the Communications Committee approve the May 2022 meeting minutes.
I second it.
All right. All in favor? Moving right along. All opposed? Nope. All right. So they're approved. Okay. Next. WPS podcast. So that's you, Dan.
All right. So
should we wait for Lisa, or do you want to do it without her?
I'll take care of it without her. And then if she can hop in if she ends up joining in the meeting. The podcast is doing great. We released our final episode of the season, the class of 2022 goodbye. It's a great listen. I recommend anybody to listen to it. We were at about 500 plays for the podcast, and anywhere from 18 to 80 plays per episode, and we have regular subscribers now for the episode, for the podcast, and the majority of people listen to the entire podcast, which is really important because a lot of times people will fall off, and you'll hear when I talk about the Board of Ed live streams, something like this. If someone's listening to all 30 or 40 minutes, it's good, which means Lisa is putting out quality content in a short amount of time, so somebody can listen to it in one sitting and not forget about it if they didn't have a chance to finish it. So kudos to Lisa. I do this all the time, and I think it's hilarious. We have people from Germany, Australia, Poland, Puerto Rico, Philippines, United Kingdom, India, and Spain who are listening to the podcast. Most people are finding it on Spotify. The age range is actually really interesting. It's almost an even split from 15-year-olds all the way up to 70-year-olds, are listening to the podcast. So we have a good age split, and slightly more females than males, and non-binary, non-specific in terms of who's listening to the podcast. So we're getting some interesting data out there, but it's one of the, I really do enjoy producing it and editing it after Lisa does her interviews, and she'll send me like a little text message, like I hit the table by accident at 10 minutes and 30 seconds. Can you please cut that out? So I have to make the note, and I have to cut that out, and I have to splice it together. But she's doing a great job with it, so I recommend everybody to have a listen. And then Facebook. So as we discussed before, I have been pre-scheduling posts for about the day before all of our Board of Ed meetings, just so that they are a reminder to everybody. They reach an average of anywhere from 140 to about 200 people per post. So that's really good. The highest post engagement. So for them, post engagement means like, pausing while you're looking at the post or clicking on the link, are the actual links for the live meetings themselves. It's probably the quickest way for someone to find the live stream link is to just, you're scrolling on Facebook and there it is. We have 357 people who have unique people who have been reached this month alone. So that's really good. We have 562 page likes, and the majority of people who like our Weston Public Schools Facebook page are 84% are women, and the majority are people between the ages of 35 and 64 years old. So we have less people at the younger and less people older than 65 years old, which makes sense because to the younger students, Facebook is for old people. So it's doing its job. We're posting meetings minutes. So I think unless anybody has any disagreement, I think that this is a pretty good method with how we remind the public about upcoming meetings and links to information. I think I mentioned last time, the only time I have a little bit of an issue is when I post something, I schedule something, let's say a week or 2 weeks in advance to post the day before meeting. If the agenda has not been posted yet, then unfortunately, either I have to go back when the agenda is posted, or if I forget, the agenda isn't posted on the link itself, but it is still posted on the calendar when Jody or June or Andrew post the agendas. But is everybody okay with using Facebook to remind people about Board of Ed meetings?
I'm fine with it.
Do you think
Yeah.
we had anything else? Any other methods?
I was just going to say, I think that we agreed that it's best to standardize on one platform. We talked about Facebook being a good platform for sending messages out, and we just let people know this is the, the official non-Weston website way of communicating. So I think all we really have to do at this point is get more people to know to sign up at Facebook.
Yep.
And I think we talked about trying to get that through PTO outreach.
Yep.
But I don't recall if that was you, Dan, reaching out to the PTO president, or who was going to do that. But I think that was a goal, was right to every PTO newsletter basically refer people to the Facebook site. So I don't think that's been done yet, because I received the PTO letters and I haven't seen that.
Yeah, and I'll catch up with Jody afterwards. What we had discussed was if there was a change in meeting times, that we would disseminate the information via the PTO. And I know that I spoke to Jody about that after the last meeting. And so she made a note that if there's any changes in dates, times for meetings, that we would go through the PTO. I know, Lisa, you had your hand raised.
Well, I have a meeting with them at 11 o'clock.
Oh, perfect.
I had spoken to them about posting certain things prior. So what do we need to post that they aren't doing? Just to
like our Weston Public, invite people to like the Weston Public Schools Facebook page.
I don't understand what that means.
So the way Facebook works is my red phone is ringing. That thing never rings.
That phone.
Yeah, the bat phone, exactly. It's like pizza.
What does it mean?
What, the red phone?
No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to move this along because I got to get to the intermediate school. What do you need me to tell them to do?
To like the Facebook page.
But I don't understand. Do you need them to put a link on there? I don't understand.
Just to like it.
Yeah, if you go on, I will send you the link, Lisa, and there's a link to our Facebook page. They like the page, and then that way they receive updates whenever we post on the district Facebook page.
And do those updates go automatically to their thing? Like, what is the point of doing that? I'm sorry.
It'll go to their Facebook feed, just like if you're scrolling Instagram.
Yeah.
Anything you like or subscribe to or are friends with, they show up in your Facebook feed.
So if you send me exactly what you want them to say, I'm meeting with them between 11 and 12 and say, for the next year, who is in charge of their posts? Let's just get this done. I thought it had been done, but it hasn't.
Yeah.
Well, it's to put it in like their newsletter, hey, as a reminder.
So if we can send that to them, I'll take care of that piece, but just send me the exact wordage. And there's a new regime coming in, so I will make sure that the technology person in those different things get it.
Okay.
And then we can just take care of it that way.
Make sure, because a lot of people don't understand that by liking or following, that's what we're asking you to do, by following our group kind of thing or joining the group, that will keep them up to date via Facebook of any changes that happen and things that are happening in the school district that they need to know.
Okay. Okay, so I can take care of that, Dan, for you. If you just send me the link or whatever needs to be out there.
You got it.
No worries. Sorry to cut you off. I have to go to an intermediate school moving up.
Aw,
But I
those are
did
great
want-
days.
I did want to pop in to say hello.
Hello.
And that's about it. We're going to be sending out our last district newsletter, either graduation or the day after. And basically, what it's going to have is the front page is going to have the link to my last podcast, even though it's already up. And then it's going to be more of a photo collage type thing.
Oh, great.
So stay tuned and look for that.
Perfect.
And we will be sending that thing out in late September about the district. Hopefully by then we'll know who the new board members are so we can put their pictures in.
Oh, actually, that's another thing too. Jody had asked me for a picture and for the bio back in the fall, saying we really need it, and I sent it to her. And I'm still just Sharon Ferraro. She never put it up
No,
on the Board of Ed website.
I'll tell her to put it on the Board of Ed website. What it was for that booklet, but okay, the website needs to have it on.
Right. Yeah, I thought she wanted it for the website. Okay.
Oh,
Perfect.
Okay, well, I'll make sure it's on the website. I think it is, but I'll double check, but that's what it's for.
Okay, great. Thanks.
What booklet?
It's going to be, it's sort of like I'm using the same title, What's Up in the Weston Public Schools. And it talks about, it's more like a state of the school thing to set the tone for the fall. I was going to do it at the end of the year. And then I thought, no, everyone's so busy. Let's get it at a time where it's a captive audience. And it's a hard copy sent to every Western resident.
Oh, I remember. I think we talked
Yeah,
about.
we're going to do it through bulk
We did.
mail. So
Yeah.
we're updating it.
And then do you also have some available that can be perhaps given to the realtors?
Yeah, I
for
have their
perspective?
address. I'm going to mail it to them. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, great.
So they have
Thanks.
everything and they know the links.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay. All right. Sorry to crash your meeting. Does
No.
anybody have a question for me? If not, I'm going to leave.
Have fun. Don't eat too many
Farewell,
mini muffins
friends.
after the graduation.
Thank you, Mr. DeVito.
Bye.
Whiplash. There's Lisa.
She needs blue and red lights on her golf cart, or a beacon on the top. That would be classic. Dan, can we get that done to a
I will.
beacon?
I will make it happen. I will make it happen.
Ay, ay, ay. All right.
So on to the BOE meeting live stream.
Mhm.
So for the live stream, we had an average of 6 viewers for the meeting. We had a peak number of concurrent viewers at 9. And the average view duration, so the average length of time that somebody would watch the stream before they'd log off, was 15 minutes and 33 seconds.
That's not that bad. I mean,
Well, there's some noteworthy information there. So we had 900% more people viewing remotely than in person.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I thought anything multiplied by 0 is 0, though, right?
You can make numbers do whatever you want.
you can.
Yeah, we had the most amount of people. Oddly enough, the highest amount of streamers or people watching, concurrent viewers, was a little bit over 2 hours into the meeting. Now, again, you're talking we went from 6 concurrent viewers to 9 concurrent viewers, but at around the 2-hour mark is when it jumped up at that point in time. Since the stream was published, so after the meeting ended, it takes a couple of minutes for it to process, and then it becomes an on-demand video. We have had a total of 39 views.
Great.
So in, the let's say 36 hours since the meeting ended, we've had 39 views. So we seem to end up having more people watch the meeting after the fact, which makes sense because it allows them to fast forward to the parts of the meeting that they find most important.
Yep.
The total watch time of those 39 views is 6.8 hours. So that means people are watching for longer than 15 minutes, right? Let me divide that. Hold on a second.
The meeting was 3 hours this last time.
Yeah, right. So it's about 20 minutes, let's say. They're watching for, let's say, about 20 minutes for the on-demand. So they're fast forwarding to where they got to go, watching it, and then moving along. But it is showing, and I will also put out there, 60% of the ways, out of the ways people are finding the video, 60% are via the Facebook post.
Great.
So it's showing that the Facebook is being utilized in a good way. 60% there, and then the rest are either via Google search or direct link, clicking on it specifically like from our website. So the stream, and I forgot to say this also, we are now starting to be recommended to people to watch when they go live. So it'll give people who have either subscribed or watched our live meetings more than one time, they'll get a pop-up now automatically if they have the YouTube app installed on their phones saying Board of Education meeting live. I don't know if you have ever used, if you have the YouTube app on your phones or on a tablet, but that's what tends to happen if you watch a channel or if you watch something more than once. YouTube's analytics know, okay, we're going to just set them little notifications. So the more people watch, the more they're going to start getting those notifications for them to click on that link and watch it. So that'll be a new source of advertisement for us, of directly from YouTube.
So Dan, if you don't have the app and you just watch YouTube through a browser and you click subscribe,
Yep.
Do you put an email address in to get notification, or you have to use the app?
So it won't happen. You can't put in an email address for notifications, but what will happen is if the user is using Chrome and if they're on their computer, they will get a pop-up, a Chrome notification saying Board of Ed meeting notification.
I was wondering if it was worthwhile, which it might not be, when the PTO lets people know about the Facebook page, the URL for the Weston Public Schools YouTube channel, that's a fixed URL, right?
Yes, it is.
And that's what you're subscribing to and has new videos.
Yep.
So it's probably worth if you're going to send a message to Lisa for her 11 o'clock, it's probably worthwhile letting people know that they should subscribe, that by subscribing to the YouTube channel, they get practically a real-time alert, right? So the Facebook alert goes out roughly the morning of, and then we all get super busy. And even though it's morning of, we forget that there's a meeting at 7 o'clock we wanted to watch.
Yep.
So the YouTube subscribe would kind of be a secondary method. Hey, it's happening right now.
Yeah. That's a good idea. So I'll send the YouTube channel link also to Lisa, and I'll put a little blurb together for them I'll put in their PTO newsletters.
Yeah.
So, but the stream went well. We did not have any problems. Again, this is the third meeting, knock on wood, in a row that we've had no issues with our TriCaster. I would like to give a shout out to one of the newest members of our IT team, Peter Abenante. He came in here and he was a TriCaster expert. So he was able to really get everything squared away and fixed up. So we have had no issues moving forward. So, are the cameras the best? No, they are not. They're still analog, but they're working. The panning and zooming has been working. We have been working with the team to make sure that they knew to pan and zoom as quickly as they possibly could to the person speaking, because I know that was a complaint at some point prior to the pandemic starting, even though we have 3 cameras, we weren't switching fast enough to the person speaking. So they've been doing a much better job with that. So I'd like to give them a little thank you and a congratulations for getting everything fixed up. But I think the stream itself has been working. We still have our backup options just in case the stream ever failed, using that camera, the 360 camera, and if all else fails, using an iPhone to stream via, direct stream via the mobile YouTube app. But that's basically it from the stream perspective. Anybody else? Did anybody have any feedback about the stream? Did you hear anything or about Facebook or the podcast or anything?
I haven't heard anything. David, have you? Because they tend to reach out to you a lot more than me on this one.
No, I mean, nobody from yesterday reached out. I think, I read the CABE policy on meetings. I think that people don't realize that we don't, unless I'm misreading it, which I don't think I am, we don't have an obligation to stream in public meetings. It's a courtesy. And, while we want to do it, we have to be conscious of what we're obligated to do. So the
Right.
fact that we do what we do, we want to reach people, but there's no obligation to do it if we're meeting in public.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. So I think that from a streaming perspective, it's a great value add that we're not obligated to do.
Yeah.
And, I think as we talked about, to spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to improve something that is a nice to have, I tend to talk a lot about the nice to have versus the need to have. Got in a little trouble for mentioning that Tuesday, but I don't want to take $40,000 out of a student's education so that we can stream something that we're doing a good enough job right now. Let's fix everything else before we start addressing things that don't necessarily have an academic return on investment.
I completely agree. And I think Dan's got more than enough stuff on his plate to take this one off. I think would probably be a wonderful, wonderful thing for him.
Yeah.
So, and his time is better spent elsewhere. So I agree.
So for the streaming though, Dan, since I guess probably the next thing we should talk about, because probably the only real bigger item for the meeting is the remote hybrid schedule.
Yeah.
But we are going to want that webinar license.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think just to kind of set us up for what the fall looks like, I know we don't have the dates yet. It's something that Tony asked this committee to give some thought to. My feeling is, we'll talk about it in a minute or two, but we want to be ready. Probably, I think the general feeling is September will be in person, the first meeting of the school year. But so it'd be nice to have the webinar license up and running. And then we would presume October would be our first remote. But why not, if we can get is a webinar license a one and done or an annual subscription?
It's an annual subscription.
Okay. And the budget runs July
1st to June 30th. So after July 1, I will go ahead and I will get the one webinar license. So the way it would work for our remote meetings moving forward is we would set up, everyone would still get a very similar, Zoom invite. All the board members, all the administrators would all get the same type of link. But what would happen is you would click on the link and then you wouldn't see yourself because you would be considered a viewer of the webinar. And then I would promote each of you into the webinar as a panelist. And then once we went live, we could give the public two links. We would give them the Zoom webinar link. And I have to see, because what concerns me about going with webinar is I want to make sure that we can still stream to YouTube because people are used to that, while also giving everybody the actual Zoom link because it's a webinar, right? So anybody who clicks on the link and they join via Zoom, you can't see them. They're just viewing a webinar. However, there are still people who are comfortable and used to using YouTube. So I would still like to stream it via YouTube. The people who join via Zoom webinar feature, when it is time for public comment, there's a hand raise feature in Zoom webinar. So if they raise their hands, either myself or Jody would promote them to a panelist, which would give them the ability to turn on their camera and unmute themselves. And then they would speak their public opinion. When they were done with their public opinion, we would public comment. We would bring them back into just being a viewer, and we would remove them as a panelist. And we would just go down the list for everybody who has raised their hand. The difference between this and the current Zoom situation is they don't have to leave the Zoom meeting once they're done with public comment. Because it's a webinar feature, they can continue watching. we don't have to worry about them muting or unmuting. We don't have to worry about cameras because they're not connected as a panelist. So we will still give, if everyone thinks it's a good idea, which I do recommend, I still think we stream via YouTube, and we allow people to join via the Zoom webinar link.
Yeah, I think yeah, Jen.
This is for the virtual meetings or for the in-person meetings?
For the virtual meetings.
Okay, so when we're streaming, what we stream on YouTube will then basically just be a recording of live, and then also a recording of the actual Zoom.
Yes.
So all the screenshots and everything exactly as they see it.
Yep.
And we're gonna do it live as well as a recording? No, live is part
that's
of
what
Zoom.
I'd like to do it live as well, because you have to think about something. Is if we're doing the 2 virtual, 1 in person schedule,
Yeah.
we don't want to confuse people, because when we do it in person, we stream via YouTube Live.
Right.
When we do it virtual, we don't want to just stream via Zoom.
Gotcha.
Because then people are going to get confused.
And they'll
And
get
then we're
off
sitting here
cycle.
having people subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Gotcha.
So I would rather always use YouTube. So we would be streaming 2 different ways for our virtual meetings.
All right.
Or another way to look at it is when we message out to the community about our Board of Ed meeting, we can simply say, if you want to participate in the meeting by way of public comment, join us through the Zoom link. If you just want to view the meeting, join us via YouTube. There's really no harm in people who just want to watch joining us through Zoom.
Right.
It's not necessary, but people who join us through YouTube cannot comment. So I think I agree with Dan that ultimately what we want is a consistent way for people to consume it, which is through YouTube.
Yep.
And then we just simply say, if you want to participate through public comment, join us through the webinar. And then,
So go ahead.
okay, and then we don't have to worry about booting people out or asking them to leave the webinar. They can choose to stay there and watch the rest of the meeting through Zoom. In the past, we would ask them to sort of leave the meeting, and I think for my purposes, people seem to think, their perception is their reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you are in the Zoom room, in the Zoom meeting, you're part of the meeting. If you're watching through YouTube, you're sort of in the hall, the doors to the room are closed, and you're watching on a TV. And that was never the intent, and it's not the intent of YouTube. So I think I think the webinar feature is better, and I think it's more inviting. And I think people who want to be part of the meeting and feel they're part of the meeting, there's something about being in the Zoom meeting they're going to get the same information, but it's a more, it feels better.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do it that way, I don't disagree, but if we're going to do it that way, my question is it really necessary, or how expensive is the webinar license? Or can we, because I don't anticipate having a tremendous amount, of course, until a hot topic comes up and then nobody anticipates it. But how many people can a regular Zoom license that we have now accommodate, and how much would be the change for the webinar license? And
Dan, before you answer that, we can start using the webinar license immediately once Dan buys it. So for our upcoming workshops, it's a Zoom webinar license for the Weston Public Schools / Board of Education. So it's not just for our meetings. It could be for our communication meeting. It could be for any of the workshop meetings. So we can start, if you get the license in July, we can start using it as early as the first workshop that we're going to have.
True.
So go ahead. Now you can so value engineering it.
I can feel that.
The Zoom webinar licensing, it's a per user license. So it's under $1,000 per license. And I would only look to purchase one license.
Okay.
And I would just assign it to whoever's hosting the meeting. So for most of the time, for the remote meetings, that's me. So I would assign myself the license, and I would be the one to create the meeting information. And then I would send a link out. And then once Jody would join, I'd make her a co-admin of the meeting. and then we'd bring everybody up. So from a cost perspective, it's not terribly expensive because I'm only going to be purchasing one license.
Okay. All right. And then the entire school district has got access to it.
Well, anybody who has a full Zoom license. So right now we only own 5 Zoom licenses throughout the district. We used to own a district license in the year 2020, 2021, because that's what teachers were using for remote learning.
Right.
However, this year we dropped Zoom because Google Meet was meeting the needs and it was part of our Google package anyways. So we dropped the district license of Zoom because that was costing us about $17,000 a year.
Okay.
However, we kept 5 licenses for specific situations such as board meetings and some larger parent meetings that like Laura Cadis has, because Zoom has a larger number of maximum participants than Google Meet does.
Gotcha.
But we transfer that license around, the 5 licenses around as needed. It's not like it's a permanent thing.
Right.
So if June needs it, I can just remove it from somebody who's not using it from one of the 5 and assign it to June, and all of a sudden she's licensed.
Okay.
So you can wiggle it around. And we would do the same thing with the webinar license. So if it was somebody beyond the Board of Ed who would need to use it as a webinar, I'd assign them a Zoom license and the Zoom webinar license.
Gotcha.
This explains why Zoom stock has gone from 360 a year ago to 108 today, because people don't need as many Zoom licenses. But
that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's good to hear that you're not paying the Zoom tax. If we can use needs and wants, use the money elsewhere.
That's exactly what it came down to when we were building the budget, and we were, and I think part of it was me really trying to be as hopeful as possible by saying like, okay, so if I don't buy the Zoom licenses, that means we won't have to go remote at all during 21-22. So the reason why we were in person all year is because of me, because I did not purchase Zoom licenses. So you're welcome, public.
You can come to work tomorrow. Don't change the lock yet.
Exactly.
All right. So the other item. Okay. So as far as so it sounds like the plan is you're going to look at acquiring the webinar license for, give or take, July 1, sometime in July.
Yep.
We should try and use the webinar license for the workshop meetings that we have over the summer.
Yeah.
Because it's a good opportunity for us to sort of try it out, get used to it, before we have a potentially much larger audience for September.
Yep.
Then the general feeling is our September meeting will be in person. We just use the standard TriCaster that gets streamed out to YouTube.
Yep.
October presumably would wind up being virtual, Zoom, webinar, YouTube streaming on as the third way.
Yep.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. And we'll just set out, like you said, David, we'll set out the clear instructions and guidelines to the public about here's how we're going to be doing this. Once the official in-person and virtual meeting schedule has been set in place in September, we'll then send out a follow-up email to the public to remind them. And then I'll also post it on like our website and our Facebook page and like pin those messages at the top of our page to remind everybody.
Okay. So one item quickly before the virtual calendar thing, which we don't have too much to talk about, just kind of come up with the plan, is I get feedback every now and then from people that the links, and I experienced this again myself, the links, when you hover over the calendar, don't always work. So for example, and I verified this myself, for our Tuesday meeting, the link to BoardBook didn't work. The link to YouTube did. So you had to click on, I think it was more details within a small calendar pop-up, and then that brings you to BoardBook. But if you just wanted to look at the agenda, so I'm just curious, I presume it's somewhat human error?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will resend out instructions on how to make sure that when you're posting stuff on our Google Calendar, that when you're copying and pasting a hyperlink, how to make sure it converts into a hyperlink on the calendar.
Okay. All right. So as far as what Tony asked us to look at, which there probably isn't much that we can do today, it's probably really deferring or referring it to Jody. So Tony asked the communication committee ultimately to make the recommendation for in-person versus hybrid. The reason I'm thinking we should at least start the process today is because Tony's going to want us to present it and presumably be approved or at least etched in stone come probably the beginning of August, so that parents know what the calendar looks like starting in September. So I don't know what we as a communication committee can do at the moment other than publish it, but I think we defer to Jody and Lisa on what makes logical sense, right? Because, right, what we talked about was there are Board of Ed meetings that fall within a certain time in the calendar year that make sense or require in person, whether it's an award ceremony or whatever the case may be. But I think we did basically want to say, to the best of our ability, we want to pick and standardize the first meeting of, is it going to be a calendar quarter or a school year quarter? But we want to basically standardize, right? That one meeting in person, 2 remote, 1 in person, 2 remote. With the asterisk, I think that if we had to go a special meeting in person, we would go in person, but we would not convert a otherwise scheduled in-person meeting to remote. So that we could we know that we have a minimum of 4 in-person meetings a year. That number could increase by need. We wouldn't convert a in-person to remote. Okay.
Right. Unless, I mean, never say never.
I mean, right, there could be an unless if we have to move something around, but I think the concept is the public should know a hard and definite date that if they want to make a public comment on something that's not super time sensitive and we're going to and they want to do it in person where they can, get the in-person experience. They know they can put that date on their calendar a month in advance, make plans for how to get their kids to soccer and baseball and I get it, right? I mean, as parents, we're trying to do so many things. So
I think what we need to do, I totally agree. I mean, my suggestion is we start the year off with an in-person meeting in September, and that's also laying out the goals and everything like that, which hopefully there will be some attendance for. And then October, November tend to be quieter months, but December is a crazy busy month with holidays. I'm afraid that we're not going to get that many people to the December meeting. However, June, do we also, I'm not sure, maybe Jody knows, but do we also typically do the, isn't there like a mid-year award for fall sports? So I think December.
That's in the beginning of December.
Okay. All right. So, but that's separate from the general meeting? Is it like we did in June?
Yeah. So it's biannual. There's one in December and one in June. It could be, it's usually not pushed to January because there's so many budget, BOE meetings. So it's generally like the first week of December.
Yeah. So I think that realistically, we're going to have to be there in person. They can see us. It's not going to be a, comment thing, but I think that the beginning of the year, maybe we do, September in person, possibly October in person, November and December. If we can do those virtually, I think everybody's busy. Zoom works better for everybody's schedule. And we'll have, of course, the board meeting in person for the recognition in the beginning of December. And then we can start the year off. I don't think it's a bad idea starting the year off. I think if we were to do January and possibly even February in person, and primarily that's because that is prime budget season and people might want to, be heard. So either do January or wait and do January virtually and do February in person or something. I don't know. But I think that these are things that we need to talk about with the rest of the board and with Lisa, Jody, and, just make sure that we're meeting, we're hitting the hot spots.
Well, yeah, I think what we need to do is, I think we probably start with Jody, right? And
Mhm.
Jody literally looks at the calendar, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Jody can do whatever she wants. I'm just going to describe if I were in Jody's shoes, which I know nothing about Jody's job, so it's very appropriate for me to say if I were in Jody's shoes. So but I'll go ahead. I started walking in Jody's shoes. I would lay out a calendar and I would put like a little color on dates that or months that we know in person is required. So like for the awards, that's a special Board of Ed meeting, so that would fall
Right.
out of this context. But start with the dates that are required. I remember with budgeting, January and kind of February, we mostly bantered back and forth on the budget. It wasn't until I believe March that we actually made what we would I think it was March, or was it February? March, I think it was. We make the actual kind of presentation where we go through it. So I think what we should do is we should try and stay to the plan, which is one meeting per either calendar quarter
Right.
or school quarter in person, 2 remote. And Jody will probably have to work with Lisa to figure out in which months do we need to be in person. Then you kind of work backwards.
Correct.
It's probably
Right. But I think if we have to add I think that it's a great concept, and I love the concept of doing 2 virtual and 1 in person. But I think if we need to add a second in-person meeting, just because we've seen, these tend to be like sticky times as far as the calendar is concerned, and in person might be better.
Right.
So be it. So I think that we, do exactly what you just said, but just also keep our options open, knowing that we may have to do more than 1 in-person meeting in a quarter if called for.
Yeah, I think the spirit of it was if we don't need to be in person, whether because the type of
Then no.
meeting dictates being in person or a topic requires being in person, something that's very highly public, folks very interested in, and we want to be able to have that interaction that you do get in person, then we should utilize the flexibility of being remote. So I agree with you.
Sure.
The concept is we can convert a remote into in person, but we should really, wherever possible, try and avoid converting it in person to remote.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The last
All
thing we want is for one of those 3 people to show up at the school and
Right.
us not be there.
Right. I moved everything around with my schedule to be at that meeting in 3 months.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right.
All right,
So,
cool.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so who is it that will relay that to Jody? Is that you, June? Or okay.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
okay. The only reason I bring it up now is because the time is going to fly, and I know that Tony's going to want us as a committee to say, this is the calendar that we've come up with, and it's going to be in August. And I don't know when in August, but it could be 6 weeks from now that Tony's asking us to give give our recommended calendar. So
Yeah, in 6 weeks, it's the beginning of August. Isn't that a scary thought?
yeah. So June, you'll get with Jody and kind of let Jody know that she should kind of mark up the calendar in her mind about what requires in person, and then kind of see where things fall. And then what will happen next is, will Judy, send an email, perhaps potentially to Sharon, Dan, and I? Is that probably the best way, rather than waiting for the next communication committee meeting?
Well,
June's like, I don't know. And that's okay, June.
yeah, I don't know if it should wait for the next meeting, but yeah, she should, communicate it to, or have Lisa communicate it to whoever the board chair turns out to be.
Well, unless you have news unless you have news I don't have yet, that'd be me.
Yeah.
No, not the communication board chair, but the
Tony. So I think
the
Tony's looking for us to come up with a recommendation.
Okay.
Prior.
So you know what?
What's your deadline?
Probably August 1st.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe just let Jody know to give us her recommendation based upon the calendar that she sees. She can communicate that back to David, and then we can have an informal discussion that doesn't break any sort of FOIA rules about this. If emails that are FOIAble or whatever, I don't know. We can figure out a way to do it without having to wait for the next communication meeting. Does that sound good to everyone? I don't want to be a rule breaker, but at the same time, I just want to get this done.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, if need be, I can go and meet with Jody, but
Okay.
I don't think there's any rules against Jody looking at the calendar and making recommendations, giving it to me, for example,
Right.
and I bring it to Sharon and maybe just you, but whoever else might be with us, and then we make the recommendation to Tony in August.
Okay.
So, okay.
That was it, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is this the end of our communications meeting for the year?
It is.
Wow.
This is the last one for a couple of months.
Where's the confetti?
There's virtual confetti. Cue the virtual confetti, Dan.
I know. I want to do this real quick.
They took out the budget. That was Zoom, not Google Meets.
That's what we lost when we dropped Zoom, right?
All right.
So in
Excellent.
that case, then my guess would be we'll probably have to reconvene informally at least one more time as a committee, because we're gonna have to agree upon what we're gonna suggest to Tony. I think the only thing going into the summer or going into the fall at this point is giving Tony our recommended calendar. And I don't
Right.
see this being so. If we have to do that, which we probably do, I guess June, you work 12 months, right?
Yes.
Okay, so chances are I'll get with Jody on the side over the next 4 weeks. I'll then get with June. We'll schedule a special.
I don't know if we have to do a special. You can just communicate it to me. I don't know, Dan. How involved do you want to be in this process?
However involved you'd like me to be. I don't mind either way.
All right, because I was going to say we could probably just have a discussion, because the board is going to have an opinion on it anyway. We know that. So why don't we just once you deal with June and with Jody, talk to me, and you and I can have a conversation and go, but say we are in agreement that this is our recommendation, and then they're going to discuss it.
Okay, so I'll just
Right.
make sure with Tony that you and I can have that conversation through.
If we do it via email and somebody wants to FOIA request our emails, have at it.
Okay.
So I don't
Okay.
have a problem with that.
Okay. All right.
So
all right. So as far as closing loop on this piece goes, June's going to let Jody know to look at the calendar. June will let Jody know to have Jody reach out to me.
Yep.
Jody and I will kind of sit down, look at it. I'll say, this sounds good. I'm going to share it with Sharon. Two of us agree it sounds good. And then we're ready by August 1, 2, 3, whatever that, beginning of August is, to present it to Tony and let Tony, shepherd it through whatever the formal process would be.
sounds good.
Okay. All right.
Excellent.
Well, in that case, then, can you get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the communications meeting.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great summer, although I'm sure we'll talk.
This is
Thanks,
just
same to you.
informal. Have a good summer. We'll be seeing each other. All right.
Exactly. See you guys later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.